So it is very essential to know that in the late 6th to 7th century AD, more changes began to happen to the now Greek New Testament. We must remember that the original New Testament was written in Hebrew, which is Afro-Asiatic language, Coptic, which is an Afro-Asiatic language, Syrian, which is an Afro-Asiatic language, and Aramaic, which is an Afro-Asiatic language. When we begin to look into the Epistle of Barnabas, it begins to liken Yahushua to the red heifer, and it likened Barabbas to the one that was beat and pierced. Now, the Epistle of Barnabas was written in 70 AD, and we can begin to go into the Epistle of Barnabas, the 16th chapter, when it begins to refer to Matthew 24. It's very important to realize that Matthew 24, when Yahushua began to speak and say, "Not one stone of this temple shall remain," he was speaking, of course, to Israelites. There was a specific set of Israelites present at this time. These would be your Karaite, quote unquote, Jews, or your Karaite Israelites. At the fall of the temple that was prophesied in Matthew 24 and confirmed in the Epistle of Barnabas, the 16th chapter, to take place, these Karaite Israelites began to flee into Egypt, which begins to give you a lot of the Nag Hammadi text that's written in Coptic, and they also went down into Medina, which we know for a fact was not only full of Israelites, but monotheistics from the time of Abraham. And the reason that this is essential is because when Muhammad, may peace be upon him, left a polytheistic Mecca, we need to remember that during this time, the Umayyad Caliphate was polytheistic. So around this time, and in 132, before this time, excuse me, in 132 AD, the Epistle of Barnabas was referred to. When we begin to look contemporary with Muhammad in the canon of the New Testament, though it had been taken and corrupted into the Greek language by the death of, actually before the death of the last apostle, which was in 100, we'll begin to see that after all of these epistles were written in Hebrew, someone got a hold of them and began to write them in Greek. And the Ebionites, or the Jamesonian Nazarenes, James the Just, Peter, Barnabas, so on and so forth, the poor at Jerusalem, they began to get upset and they began to write. And Origen, Eusebius, so on and so forth, began to state that they were upset about the Greek interpretation because it began to bastardize the Hebraic thought process. So we began to look at the book of Daniel, the 9th chapter, and it begins to state that a kingdom shall come that will be established forever. We have to be aware, and this is how you begin to know that people are not as deep prophetically as they claim to be. Prophetess Celestial, quote unquote, began to state that she didn't even know what the Byzantine Empire is, but she has all of these end time wars, rumors of wars, and things of that nature. When we begin to look at the statue in Daniel, we see that in 325 AD, the Romans began to come in. And we know you have your eastern leg and your western leg, your left leg and your right leg that are stated. But most importantly, that was in 325 AD, okay? So then in 600 AD, when you begin to have Muhammad, after the scepter has passed from Judah, because Judah already came in the time of Yahushua. Therefore, he began to prophesy about the one who would come with the signs of the solar eclipse. During the time of Muhammad, there were 251 solar eclipses. So what began to take place is that the Byzantine Empire was in rule, and Muhammad ended up becoming contemporary with these Karaite Israelites. And according to their tradition, not rabbinic Judaism, they do not agree with the rabbis. They refer to them as Pharisees and Sadducees. And Yahushua actually warned of them in the Gospel of Thomas. And Thomas actually means Didymos, or twin in Aramaic. So when Yahushua was talking to Thomas, he was literally saying twin when he was speaking to him. And his name was Thomas Judas. And when you begin to look in the book of Mark, we all know that Yahushua had a brother by the name of Judas or Judah. And that would be Thomas, twin. Okay? And we could go for biblical typology when it comes to twins being born at the time of Judah as well. Let's go there. I got like 4 more minutes. Okay, TikTok. When we begin to look at the history, it is believed that Tamar is actually the daughter of Melchizedek, the high priest. And I did the numbers on it, and it definitely lines up. So we know that Tamar was the mother of Pharez and Zerah, the tribe of Judah. And we know that Pharez went into France as well as some other places, and Zerah went into Erie land or Irie land. And so we'll talk about that, right? And so this is why she would have been stoned, because according to the Levitical law, a daughter of a priest that was found playing the harlot would be killed. That was capital punishment for the daughter of a priest. When we begin to look at Mary, mother of Yahushua, it is stated that her father, Joachim, was a Levitical priest. Therefore, if Yahushua's genealogy ran through Mary, it would be Levitical. But we know that's heresy according to the Old Testament. We always kept the census by the men. So when we began to look at Miriam, her parents were stated to have infertility issues. What if I began to tell you that Mary had a sister named Mary? And Mary also had a sister named Salome. And so Salome in the Bible, that is Yahushua's auntie. So when we began to look at the Gospel of Thomas, this was written in 30 AD before Yahushua ascended. And we know this because 80% of the canon holds what's in the Gospel of Thomas, and the Gospel of Thomas can actually be looked at as a Q source. And so the Gospel of Thomas even begins to say that Yahushua warned, and he begins to say, if you meet a man who was not born of flesh and blood, bow down to him, for he's your father. He rejected worship, okay? And he began to warn of the one that was in the desert, who was a Pharisee, in the Gospel of Thomas, which is more than likely the Q source. 113 of the quotes and sayings of Yahushua that's present in the New Testament is found in the Gospel of Thomas. So when we begin to look at the Epistle of Barnabas, it was part of the canon in the time of Muhammad. May peace be upon him. And after him, it was removed from the canon. It's also important to know that with the Gospel of Barnabas, they try to call that erroneous completely. The Gospel of Barnabas is the exact length and written exactly like the 4 Gospels. So when we begin to look at the Karaite Israelites, they did not refer to Yahushua as the Son of God. They referred to Esdras as the Son of God. And when you begin to look at 1st and 2nd Esdras, you will begin to see exactly why. The rabbinical Jews, with the Pharisees, Sadducees, basically these Paulinian Christians, they referred to Yahushua as the Son of God. And in the 6th century, this is when the Son of God began to be placed in the canon. And all of these other books were wholly and totally removed so that we could begin to worship in the Greco-Roman standpoint, to deify a man, to make him God, and to bow down and give honorific worship to him was considered paganism in the Hebraic thought. These were monotheistic people. The Trinity is pagan. And we need to begin to ascertain some historicity when it comes to these books, when they were taken out and what language they were first written in. The Gospel of Barnabas also was found with 6 Syriac fragments. So there's a lot of information that's out there. We just talked about the Gospel of Thomas, the Epistle of Barnabas, and the Gospel of Barnabas. So I really hope that you guys take notes to this video. I know it's a lot of information in there, but All of this points to Yahushua ascending. This is Jacolia.